What is up, Home League Pod, where there is no you in league? We have a fantastic episode coming up for you today. Week 8, we're going to go through everything. Let's kick it off. Producer, bring up the rundown. All right, so we're going to go through our week in review. We'll talk results. We'll talk prediction leaderboard. We'll talk clowns and crowns, Blunder Report, fraud watch. Then we'll jump ahead to our guest of the week. We'll jump into some pod updates, and then we will close it out. We have a fantastic commissioner's address today, and we will close out the episode, of course, with the catch-up with our guest this week. But before we get to that, let's kick things off over to the Week 6 results. All right, so Week 6, we had 5 matchups that were determined on Monday night. Only one matchup done as of Sunday. On that day, we had Steve versus Jesse. Steve rips ahead to 5-2. He scored 102 points, got 94 rushing yards on 16 carries, 3 touchdowns, plus another 38 receiving yards to boot from Jonathan Taylor. Pat Mahomes continues his QB1 season going for 286, 3 touchdowns, and 28 rushing yards, putting him at 3rd in the NFL for QB rushing yards on the season. On the other side, Jesse puts up a rough performance that I am calling a poop Oreo. He had a fantastic day from Justin Herbert, 4 touchdowns, over 25 points, saw the end zone with a tight end flex play, but everything else in the middle, not great. Had less than 100 yards total, 0 touchdowns, just a rough day. He looks to bounce back in Week 7. All right, going ahead now to our second matchup that was decided on Monday night, looking at that Bucs-Lions game. Jimmy versus Brendan. Jimmy with Jahmyr Gibbs. Brendan looking at Mike Evans, finally back off the disabled list. Unfortunately, Mike Evans goes down again before completing a catch, but I'm not sure it would matter as Jahmyr Gibbs goes off for over 200 total yards and 2 touchdowns, along with some strong Cowboys performances and a vintage Devonta Smith week. Jimmy takes the lead with 122 points for the week, and he pushes ahead to 5-2. Our next matchup that was decided, myself versus Evan Gladney, a nail-biter going in after Mac Jones scores 5 points on Sunday Night Football to keep the total matchup within 10, but Jamison Williams lays a goose egg on Monday as Rachaad White knocks together a couple more points for my team, and I take an ugly, ugly win. Moving on to our next matchup decided. It was the second Sunday night game. We had Seattle versus Houston, and we had Ryan. He had Jackson Smith-Njigba going up against Knicks' Kenneth Walker, and he came through with another vintage performance as JSN continues his wide receiver 1 performance this year. Rillo, unfortunately, disappointed by another wishy-washy Ken Walker performance where he is vultured at the end zone by Zach Charbonnet. Moving on to the next matchup decided. Bill and Ned go in with a nail-biter on Monday night going into the second game. Bill has Woody Marks and Sam Laporta going, while Ned is relying on Nico Collins. This one going down to the wire, just a couple of points between them in the fourth quarter of that Texans-Seahawks game, but unfortunately Nico Collins goes down with a head injury, and then Woody Marks gets the touchdown in the end zone after a couple of red zone targets. You have to wonder if Nico's in the game. Does he catch that touchdown and flip this matchup? But it doesn't matter. It goes to Bill. And then our matchup of the week, 2 juggernauts between Ty and Glenn. They go down to the wire. Didn't quite look like that at the end as CJ Stroud again finds an additional touchdown to Woody Marks in the final moments of the game. But there were a few throws where Stroud almost throws a pick, almost flips the score, but ultimately Ty's efforts not enough as he scores 118 in a loss to Glenn's 128. So those are the matchups. Producer, am I missing anybody? I don't think so. We're moving on. So this is our new predictions leaderboard. Didn't really talk about this too much. I kind of ignored it, didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to take the notes, but we've decided in the interest of the quality of the pod, we're going to go ahead and pull these. So you can see I've got some leaders next to me. I've got some matchup predictions as well as our anytime touchdown predictions. Some interesting variants here as we have pretty much tied. Everybody is tied. Ryan got 1 out of 6 on his parlay after going 5 for 6 on picks. Ty, same thing. Jimmy struggles on the win-loss, but he gets the parlay 4 out of 6. So we're going to give Glenn the opportunity. He did not get to do a 6-player anytime touchdown, so this is the official invite to Glenn. Glenn, any week you want, send me 6 players who are going to score a touchdown. We'll get you on that leaderboard. We'll see where your score ends up for that. So we'll follow along all year. We'll see who comes out on top. Moving on, we've got our clowns and our crowns, or our crowns and our clowns, depending on how you want to say it. First up, with our highest points total team, we've got Glenn Carney at 128 points. Moving on to quarterback, we've got, ironically, Jesse. And we'll get to why that's ironic in a second, but he scores the most at quarterback with Justin Herbert at around 27. Moving on to running backs, we've got, I don't remember. We've got Bill, who had a monster day from Christian McCaffrey. He scored, I think, over 33 points, went for a crazy number of yards. I had it in my notes, but I can't find that fast. So Bill gets our crown of the week for running backs. Moving on to wide receiver, we are looking at Glenn. He had a monster day from a monster wide receiver room. That's could be vintage as we move toward the season. We've got Joe Flacco back with Jamar Chase. We had A.J. Brown turning it on, and then we had CeeDee Lamb returning from injury, scoring 18 points of his own. Going to be a tough room to stand up against. And then at the flex and tight end spot, we are looking at Tyler. Tyler had a big day from DeAndre Swift, as well as his tight end. Moving over to our clown side, we have on the team low score, we have Jesse. We've alluded to this a little bit. It's ironic because last week, Glenn was our clown of the week for team score, and he was also our clown QB. This week, Jesse is our team clown, but our QB crown. So anything can really happen. We're going to get into a little bit of why. So our QB clown for the week is looking at Mr. Nick Perillo. Caleb Williams, just a putrid performance down in New Orleans, spared me after starting Mac Jones. Then moving on to running backs, we've got Jesse. Put together a rough start with Caleb Johnson on the Steelers. Didn't record a point. Not sure he recorded a snap. Moving on to wide receivers, we've got Jesse again. Rough day from, I think, Debo, somebody else. I think somebody else scores 0. Just a tough day. Calvin Ridley's hurt. Really rough week for Jesse, but just 1 week. And then moving on to our tight end and flex, we had Ryan. Couldn't quite get anything going from those positions, but ultimately didn't matter as he secured the win. All right, moving on to our Blunder Report. I've got great news, guys. Got a blunder-free week, so good job. No blunders, nothing to talk about. Bill was our closest candidate as he won by 10 points and left 40 from Bo Nix on the bench. All right, moving on. We've got Fraud Watch. So again, median scoring, looking to get our records against the median score. Really not too much variation from the league itself, from the record, the head-to-head record, but we can see ties up there at the truest record, sitting at 6-1. Bill +4 from his actual record against the median score at 6-1. Glenn, little bit of a fraud watch at 5-2, but not really. And then the 3 5-2 teams all getting a little bit of variance luck against the schedule. Ryan as well. Ned starting to catch up a little bit. And then the 2 and 5 teams all looking true, except Evan, who is looking to get scammed at least 1 week on the schedule. So that is our fraud watch. We will continue to watch. And maybe we'll even get what the median score was calculated. Maybe our research department can start pulling that for us. So that is Fraud Watch. Now, that is the week in review. We are going to move on. We're going to introduce our special guest this week. Very excited. So please let me introduce to you, without any further pause, Mr. William Francis. Billy, can you join us on the pod? All right. I'll do my clap. Fantastic to have you here. How are you doing, Bill?
I'm doing great.
All right. So you can't see it, but next to you, we've got some historical stats. Your overall finish in the league, a little bit up and down, but a lot of high peaks. Not a lot of people in the league can say they've made the playoffs as many times as you, and I don't believe anybody in the league can say they have appeared in the championship as many times as you do. You have a ring. It does say here, I'm going to just clarify, it does say that Billy got last after getting first. That is not quite true by record. That's more of a playoff thing. So if you see yourself getting last, maybe you didn't quite get last, but a little bit of a rough year last year. I'm sorry, a couple of years ago after the championship, but you jumped back with a second place finish last year. Is that correct? I don't remember that. So yeah, impressive. You've made it back since beating me.
The time I've lost in the championship.
Third loss. That is a lot of them, but I think there are some people who would be kind of envious of at least losing a championship. So nothing to hang your head on. Looking at your team, you've got a pretty good mix of players that are acquired, players that even are some that are traded for, and then players that you drafted. So I've kind of asked everybody this. Obviously, a rough start to your year, going 0-5 to start. A couple players maybe not quite hitting the usage or the role that maybe you were anticipating. But let's go back to the draft. Let's rewind. Did you have any kind of strategy coming in? Another successful season last year. Is there any strategy that you had coming into this year that guided your draft that maybe you're seeing start to play out, or maybe some risks that you knew you were taking that you're also kind of seeing come around to maybe bite you? Any insights on your draft process and so far after the results after 7 weeks?
So I, like everyone else, I'm sure, did a ton of mock drafts that prepared me for nothing. Our draft is unique every year, and you can never predict what's going to happen. So when I got to the second round, I believe, and I had the choice between A10 and Puka, I was frozen. I went with a gut there, and then the rest kind of worked itself out. But I don't really go in with a general, like a correct plan. It's more of a gist of who I want in certain times, or what position I would target when. Especially based off of ADP, even though we're not necessarily ranking slaves in our league, it still falls along the lines at least.
Yeah, I think we might not be full ranking slaves, but I do think that we look for value, and that kind of can be the same thing at the end of the day. Yeah, that makes sense. I think definitely, going. I was picking right after you in the second round. Wasn't sure if you were going to go HN or Puka. I didn't think either of those guys were going to be a decision that I had to make. So I imagine you were kind of in the same boat. So it definitely interesting too, guys. I think with risks to players around them could get hurt, to a Stafford. So I think that there were definitely some fear with those players, but so far they both worked out pretty well. So you
I think the biggest risk I took was I ended up taking a lot of old heads. CMC, Devontae Adams, DK Metcalf. I mean, I feel like I didn't really take any risks on some young guys.
Yeah.
I missed out on one of those.
And that's it. That
even some of my bench pieces, Khalil Shakur and Austin Eckler earlier in the year, Aaron Jones. I need a little bit of a youth movement. Thank you for dropping Woody Marks.
Yeah, that was my next question. Were you aware that Woody Marks existed until I drafted him, or was that someone maybe you were looking at before the draft?
Yeah, I was aware he existed. I didn't think that he'd be thrust into the role so early, especially considering the uncertainty around Joe Mixon. I thought it would be more of a Band-Aid type of situation where you'd get a guy for, 5-6 weeks, and then Joe Mixon would come back and be Joe Mixon.
Yeah.
Which obviously has not been the case.
Yeah, that the Woody Marks drop. I've had some success on waiver pickups this year, but the Woody Marks drop might really come back to bite me in the ass. Was not, and I kept Jaden Blue. Enjoy, Jesse. All right, so our Woody Marks question got asked. I do want to talk about you. You have made a rare trade this season. Obviously, a little bit of a forced trade with your record, trying to avoid bye weeks. What was it about Drake London that kind of made you think, hey, been a little up and down, but where are you seeing Drake London's upside, or do you think that maybe he's not really going to pay off that draft ADP, and that's why you targeted him with someone like Devontae Adams?
I think he's a lot more high variance than Devontae Adams. He has probably a higher ceiling considering he doesn't have Puka Nacua to fight for targets with, but he also has a much lower floor considering his quarterback is Michael Penix compared to one of the greats in Stafford. So I think there was a little bit of a pro-con situation where I was kind of thinking the risk was better taking the risk with Drake London was better because he's already post-buy and I wouldn't need to worry about it.
Now, it's kind of interesting because you had mentioned that
I needed wins right away.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can't really be tolerating any bye weeks at this point. So you had, something interesting last week that came up was that Ty went into the draft specifically targeting rookies. Obviously, he's come out with Warren. He's come out with Ibuka. I think there's even another one in there, but I can't remember right now. But you had mentioned that you ended up kind of with, some maybe older players. Do you think that was maybe just a result of reacting to guys in our league targeting younger guys? Or do you have a process where you're kind of looking and saying, hey, this younger rookie is getting some hype, but maybe that's actually creating some value in a guy like, Aaron Jones or ETN. Was that on your mind at all for the draft, or was it kind of more just like you said, that's how the draft board came to you?
I think it was more of the latter, where the draft just kind of fell the way it did, and those players were available later than I would have expected them to be in some cases. So I felt like I just had to take them at that point.
Yeah.
And again, it wasn't really I was targeting them, but the chips fell the way they did.
Perfect. All right, I think that's enough for your team. Again, obviously sitting at 2-0 in the last 2 weeks after an 0-5 start, looking to keep that win streak going this week against Ryan. We'll get to our matchup predictions in a little bit, but first we are now going to jump to our Power Rankings October edition, Scary or Scared. So last week, Tyler and I went through, we decided whether a team and a manager was ultimately scary, you don't want to face them, or are they scared? Are they kind of in a rough position? Maybe their team's not working out the way they wanted it to, or someone like in your case where just rough record, rough variance. So what I want to do this week is we'll talk. Maybe there's some teams that can change, but after we finalize which are scary and which are scared, we're going to go through and just rank. We'll start at number 1 and just work our way down, from scariest to maybe the least scary but still scary, and then least scared but then down to most scared. So I'll kick this off. I made a push to label Brendan as a scary team. He had Mike Evans coming back. He had Bucky Irving on his IR. He had Scadaboo emerging, looking like a really legit, RB2 kind of RB1 guy. Josh Jacobs with the strong campaign. Daniel Jones gets in there at QB. But he starts 2-4, gets me a little worried, or maybe 1-4, whatever it was. But I ended up pushing him to the scary category. I figured there was enough time, or scary category. There was enough time. I'm now looking back with an extra loss in the loss of Mike Evans. I do think that we push Brendan over to the scared side, but I want to get your thoughts before we go ahead and do that. What are we thinking between Brendan's team, between scary and scared?
That's high variance. It's hard to really group one way or the other, but his team had some good bones, but he definitely lacks in wide receiver depth. I think if he makes a couple of moves in the very near future, then he can put himself right back in the scared category.
I like that. Maybe even some manipulation there from you, Orban. I think we can go ahead and put Brendan maybe at the, I don't know if I'd call him the least scared team, but I think we can move him over to scared. And I think I'm going to call out this as well. I worry about George Pickens after CeeDee Lamb gets back. Obviously, George Pickens looks great. I was saying, I think multiple times in the pod that, the time he got to just spend with Dak as the number one, target might have been good for them to gel. But I do think that he kind of takes a second seat to CeeDee Lamb now that he's back. All right, so let's jump over to the scary side. Who is your number 1 scary team? We have Steve, Tyler, Jimmy, myself, and Glenn as the scary squads.
So, no offense, Steve. Jonathan Taylor is very scary, but I think it's definitely between Tyler and Glenn. Tyler has so many different ways he can beat you, from beating Daniel to Timmy gets healthy. I know he's not this week, but John, Ed Buka, and Tyler Warren, I mean, there's so many ways that he could score 30 points from one player. It is very frightening. But if you look at Glenn's team, obviously his wide receiver room is horrific. Definitely very scary.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think Glenn is the scariest team. We can go ahead and rank him at number 1. Like you said, that wide receiver room is just, that would be, those wide receivers are the best wide receiver on plenty of people's teams. And then to have Junkins, James Cook, I know James Cook was on bye last week, and I think people kind of forgot as Glenn scored 128 points and looked, like his full self, but he was not. He had his number 1 running back on bye. So, and if he finds a QB in Dart after the Broncos game, things could get pretty scary pretty quickly. Are we in agreement that Ty is then number 2?
Yeah, and again, no offense to Steve. I think Glenn and Ty are very close, and there's a little bit of a drop-off before it hits Steve. But Steve is the clear 3, and I think there's another step after that.
I would push that I'm actually 3rd. I definitely can make an argument that I'm 5th. But I think if Saquon Barkley stop sucking, then I think I'm immediately launched into a pretty scary territory with Puka and Rashi. Might have some advantages with Josh Allen at QB over some of those other teams. So we'll see. I definitely, I do think Steve's team right now, between Amon-Ra St. Brown, Pat Mahomes, and Jonathan Taylor playing well, I think we can give him the third spot. And I'm kind of sitting here with potential energy
We've
on
seen it with
Saquon.
this team.
Exactly. Yeah, we need to see Saquon break out, and maybe he won't. So, all right. So we'll put Steve at third. I could make the argument that Jimmy is even better than my team right now, just again because we're seeing Gibbs actually come through on that first round draft pick capital, whereas Barkley really is like a huge stick in my wheel. So would you agree that Jimmy right now is over my team, or would you put me over Jimmy?
I put you guys definitely in the same tier. I think that both of your teams are very scary as well.
Yeah, I think a lot. Once again, Jimmy has a lot riding on Marvin Harrison. If he can really kind of break out later in the second half of the year and kind of start to take over as a true alpha, then that's going to get pretty scary. We can go ahead and put Jimmy at 4, and we'll put myself at 5. A little classic neg, a little self neg. All right, so on our scary side, we've got Glenn at number 1, Ty at number 2, Steve at number 3, Jimmy at 4, and your host at number 5. So going over to the scary or scared, I'll kick this one off. I'm going to put you as the least scared team. Not to say that you don't have the highest sense of urgency with the record, but I think that I think you're the highest projected team this week, or one of them. And I think that with your 2 running backs, Achane and McCaffrey, plus your wide receiver room now, again with Drake London, a lot of upside. I think if you can figure out the quarterback situation, your team will settle into a real nice spot, and won't be so exposed after maybe a rough start to the beginning of the season. So do you agree, or do you feel like maybe no, like there's some other issues on your team, we want to pull you down on the right, put you a little more scared?
Well, I mean, the standings kind of shook out in a favorable way for me last week. They're actually totally symmetrical, a little strange.
Mm-hmm.
1 6 and 1 team, 1 1 and 6, and so on and so forth. But I'm 1 win out of a playoff spot facing Ned, assuming he loses, obviously, but 1 game back, and I have a point advantage on him, so it would take 1 win from me and 1 loss from him, and I would be right in the 7th slot. But still very early, and a lot could happen.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think the standings were definitely a little bit favorable for me last week.
Yeah, I'll agree. I think your team's upside. Again, the record is scary, but like you said, it's not been a lack of scoring points that has really held you back. So I'm okay to put you on the we'll say the 6th spot, but really the first for least scared. Next up, do you have any ideas? I got a couple, but I'll throw it to you. Do you have any ideas on who you would put after yourself on this side? We've got a team with a winning record over here.
Yeah, I think it's Ryan or Ned. They're definitely close. I think Ned got a nice little bump from Henry Miller going down.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Kamara is going to be as explosive as he used to be, but he's going to get plenty of work.
Yeah, without a doubt.
The Saints are not that bad of a team. I don't expect them to be winning much, which is a very positive game trip for Kamara. Their backup running back has hands like feet now,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't think he's going to be on the field with third downs or any passing scenarios, which they're going to find themselves in very often.
Yeah, I think another interesting thing. I think ultimately I would go Ryan at this spot, and I think we can get into it. But I would put Ned right after that. He's got the wins. Just getting a win, any week is going to put you in a better spot. I think the big thing with Ryan, and the reason I would throw out there, is just because he lost Neighbors obviously, but he still is JSN. Garrett Wilson will come back eventually. I do think Chase Brown has started pretty much as badly as you could, especially given the draft pick. But I think with Flacco, he might be able to salvage something and be, a serviceable RB2 kind of candidate. Henderson, again, same thing. I think can't get too much worse. Maybe it never happens, maybe it doesn't happen, but there's been plenty of examples of rookies, in the last 6 weeks of the season really taking off. So I would put, Ryan and then Ned. And then after that, I think just with the record, I would put Brendan. I'd put Brendan under Ned. I do think that Ned, I was going to say this before, I think Ned could be in a nice spot if Olave gets traded. Because if Olave finds a better QB, maybe a better offense, obviously tough to adjust mid-season, but that could also vacate a ton of targets for Kamara, like you said. So could be a nice double bump if he kind of, Olave gets an upgrade on the offense and QB, and then Kamara just gets some downwind volume. So, but still, I think there's some issues with Ned's team with Nico Collins and Genti really struggling to take off. All right, and then we get to our bottom three here. We've got Evan, Jesse, and Rillo. Who are you going to put as the most, well, we'll say who is after Brendan? Who is maybe the top of this next tier for least scared? So we'll put the best team out of these three. All right, our guest is frozen a little bit, so I'm going to take over here. So we've, I'm going to put, I'll put Rillo. I've had some faith in Rillo. It's burned me, I think, last week, but I think between Kyron, Justin Jefferson, maybe Keenan Allen, maybe we can get some.
I'm sorry.
All right, perfect. You didn't miss much. Luckily, I can suck the air out of a room. But I put Rillo as the best of these. I think Kyron and Justin Jefferson give him some stability there. Caleb's been good. He's had weeks where he's been fine. He's obviously terrible last week, but that's going to happen. But I think Rillo's got some pieces. Dobbins, Keenan Allen are serviceable behind those Kyron and Justin Jefferson. So I think Rillo's probably the closest to having a roster that maybe can do something. But obviously just teetering on the brink here with a 5-2 record.
I would agree.
Nice. All right, and then our two in a matchup earlier this year, I dubbed the Sad Boy matchup of the week. Kind of another rendition of that between Evan and Jesse. Evan, makes the trade, makes the move to get out of the Jamar Chase situation after a rough start. Maybe fires the gun a little bit prematurely there, and then watches Jamar Chase go off with Flacco as Jalen Waddle is stuck into a hell. But on the other side, Jesse is starting Caleb Johnson, and I really just don't know. Calvin Ridley's been a complete disaster. I think I'm going to just lean Jesse because he's got Derrick Henry and Brian Thomas Jr. I'm not totally out on beat TJ. And, if Derrick Henry and him can kind of do something, maybe even a week or two, they can become trade assets. Whereas I don't know if Evan has an asset right now that can, get as valuable, even on paper, as like a Derrick Henry.
I agree. Unfortunately, the Jets are thinking chip. Brees Hall has the most touches without a touchdown by I think about 70. He has like 110 or something along those lines, and the next highest without a touchdown is in the 40s. It's not going well over there.
Yeah, definitely been.
But Brees Hall is a trade target in trade rumor, so maybe he gets a nice bump and goes somewhere that gives him a little bit more room to run.
Yeah, and same with Waddle. I know the Dolphins, I think, came out and denied those rumors, but we'll see. Maybe both of those guys will have a new home in a couple of weeks. Give Evan a little bit of a new outlook. But yeah, I kind of agree. Just tough to be part of that Jets offense right now. They're just really struggling to get close to the end zone. All right, so there you have it. We're gonna put. Oh, I don't think we decided. So are we going? We're going Jesse, right? Jesse over Evan. All right, so we've got Jesse as our second most scared team, and Evan, unfortunately, for the month of October, you are our most scared team, but that's okay. All right, moving on. So we have our next segment, Booms and Busts. We will go through each matchup just to give everybody an overview. You're going to pick a winner. You will then, we will share a bust and a boom from each matchup. They can be from the same team. You'll see that in a couple of examples. So I'm sorry if your team gets picked for the L and no booms and busts. You're just a boring squad. But we're going to go through our first matchup. I don't know if you have them in front of you, Bill, but I'll let you kind of take over. Tell us who you picked. The first matchup is going to be Nick versus Jesse in a matchup I don't have a title for. But I got a title for a couple of these. But again, who do you got in Jesse versus...
Pick my winners?
Yeah, share your winner, share your boom, share your bust. We've got an overlay so the crowd can see. But if you can just kind of talk through your thinking, and then we'll move on to the next matchup. But for the first one, we've got Rillo at Jesse.
I have Nick winning the basement boy fight. And I have J.K. Dobbins with a nice boom. They're playing Dallas, so everybody boomed against Dallas. I think he's one of very many Denver Broncos that quarter. And the bust, I'm sorry, Jesse, but it's HCM. Playing at Kansas City with Mariota under center, I think that the Chiefs are going to purposely make Mariota beat them in the air, and that is not going to bode well for Crossy Bears.
All right, there you have it. So we've got Nick taking the win, Dobbins with a boom, and Bill on Bill Crime, Bill with a bust for JCM. All right, our next matchup we'll bring up is going to be the commissioner himself versus our number 1 seed, Jimmy versus Glenn. Take it away, Bill. Who you got this week between a 5-2 Jimmy and a 6-1 Glenn?
I have Glenn winning. Jimmy's on his apocalypse. He bit the bullet even more by giving away Drake London and taking another player on bye in Devontae Adams. So I have the booms and busts actually are both from the same team, and they are not from Jimmy's, though. They're both from the winner's team, Glenn. I think James Cook announces himself back from the bye in those 4 games that they had prior to it. I think he has a nice big boom, and I think Jackson Dart, unfortunately, is going to be the bust this week. The Eagles already saw him once, and I think that they're going to come very prepared. He has nobody to throw to. He is throwing to DoorDash delivery driver. I don't think Dart is going to pull off a magic this week.
Yeah, I'd like to think that Vic Fangio will have something prepared, extra special for Jackson Dart, but we'll see. I'm sure he thought he had something special prepared.
He had some
last
nice
time.
words for Jackson Dart, but I agree he's going to come prepared.
I think, yeah, you got to be nice to a guy who puts 40 points on you. All right, so we will go on. Our next matchup is myself versus our number 2 seed, Tyler, the Department of Warren. Who do you got in this one? Again, we've got 5-2 me versus 5-2 Ty. Oh, battle of the QB.
In this matchup, give me one battle. Yes, right.
All right, so you've got Ty winning.
Tyler winning the matchup. All right, and I have Bijan going boom. The Falcons are playing against the Dolphins, who are dumpster fire. I think Bijan has a huge day. And for the bust, I have Rasheed Wright. I'm sorry, everything was great last week. He scored, 2 touchdowns first game back. I think that the Chiefs are going to run over the Commanders, and I don't think that they'll need to throw the ball very much. So I think Rasheed has a bust week.
That's some pretty sound logic. Yeah, I could definitely see the Chiefs just not needing to necessarily dial things up against a kind of hobbled Commanders crew. And then on the other side, my only hope is that the Falcons are winning by 27 points by the middle of the second quarter, and then maybe Bijan just doesn't see the field in the second half. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for here. We'll see if it happens. All right, moving on to our next matchup, we have Steve versus Jesse. Jesse in maybe a do or die moment. Steve looking to. You know what? This is from last week.
Bye, Evan.
That's a fail here. So we've got Evan. I'm sorry about that, everybody. We will not be able to change that. So we've got Steve versus Evan in a similar situation. Evan kind of again back against the wall. Since my overlay is not helping at all. Who are the winners? Who are the booms and busts that you have for this matchup?
So I alluded to it a little bit earlier, but I have Steve winning this. And the bust that I was alluding to was Breece Hall. Everyone sees the smash spot against Cincinnati, porous run defense. I don't see it. I think they're going to be chasing for much of the game, and I don't think that he's going to have a very good game.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
How boring is this? Jonathan Taylor.
That could be a tough boom. He's projected for 23, so if he scores 23, we're not really counting, we're not tracking booms and busts, but we'll have to maybe get a more exact definition here. But yeah, he definitely is primed for a big day. Kind of agree with the Breece Hall stuff. Maybe I'll hold my breath and see what Tyrod Taylor can do. Instead of Justin Fields, I imagine Justin Fields is not playing this week. Yeah, ultimately, I'm not sure if there's really much going on for the Jets there. All right, let's see if we've got an overlay for our next matchup. We have Ryan versus you. We do have this correct. All right, so in this matchup, who do you have in this one?
I have myself winning. I know that's not very good karma, but
No, that's a
I'm
pod
a
rule.
logic over that.
Have to pick yourself.
Yeah. So with the boom, I have Bo Nix repeating a boom performance, but he is playing Dallas. I mentioned it earlier. Everybody booms against Dallas, and I don't think this is the week that that stops. For the bust, I have picked Brown. You mentioned you thought that maybe he'll get back to his RB2 self. I do not think that that's going to be the case. Joe Flacco is one of the quickest to throw in the league, and that is not because he's waiting for people to get open. It's because he has no option. He's got to do it before he gets sacked. So I don't think this is going to open up very many lanes for Brown.
That's fair. Yeah, and he did get the 108 yards, but I've kind of continuously talked. He just doesn't get a lot of touches. He only gets about 10 to 12 touches a game. I think he had one reception in a game that Joe Flacco threw the ball a lot. So it seems like he kind of prefers Samaje Perine out there for the passing down. So that's definitely going to hurt because I do think a lot of people preseason were looking at Chase Brown as a 3-down back, not an early downs back. So it definitely might hurt him a little bit. But we'll see. Might just even just a couple more red zone opportunities I think could really change things for him. All right, and then our final matchup here, we have the Duffy Bowl. Brendan has been, after a championship season, he's just on a story this year. I think I talked about it last week, but he is in his third storyline in 3 weeks. But he's got his cousin. He's got Mr. Daniel Duffy. Who do you have between Brendan and the one known as Ned?
I have Ned. Ned just barely lost to me last week, so I think that he is scoring a lot of points. He's putting up solid weeks. I have Jalen Hurts as my boom, and I think that's a big part of why he wins. You guys all saw the colossal meltdown of the Giants last week. That occurred as soon as two defensive backs for the Giants, their top cornerback and their top safety, got injured on the same drive. And as soon as they left the game, the Broncos did not have a single drive that did not result in a touchdown or scoring, I should say. So I think Jalen Hurts is going to have a monster game and shred a very depleted secondary. And for my bust, I have Chris Olave. Sorry, Ned, he scored 2 touchdowns against me, but he's not doing that again. So.
All right, yeah, again, a lot of attention will definitely be on Olave. I'm not sure. He's got a Q next to his name. I'm not sure why. But, yeah, Jalen definitely could be in a smash spot against the Giants. I imagine he is stewing in that loss from 2 weeks ago, and hopefully, like Vic Fangio, might have something to say about it. So we will see. And again, I think Ned's team largely kind of goes by the way of Jalen Hurts. That is his star player. That's his guy that can, just absolutely dominate a matchup, and really, just prevent Ned's score from going so low. And that's one of the reasons he's got a winning record is because he does, he doesn't necessarily have that high ceiling yet, but definitely buoyed up on a nice high floor. All right, those are our booms and busts, Bill. We will revisit all of those next week on our leaderboard predictions. We'll see. Right now, last week, 2 weeks in a row, our guest has picked 5 out of 6 matchups correctly. We'll see if you can go perfect 6 for 6, and then maybe you can make up some points in our anytime touchdown parlay in a little bit. All right, so we're going to jump ahead really quickly to pod updates. Nothing too crazy here. We didn't have any emails, so no email segment. That's fine. I'm not hurt. My feelings aren't, damaged. I'm not feeling like no one cares or that the friends in this group aren't, committed. But no mailbag. I do want to throw out there though that I would like to pull from the community a new segment. I would like to run with something called the neg of the week. And I think that we need to start getting into negology a little bit more and really explaining what negs are. And I'm going to pull up an example. Last week, Ty tried to conjure some voodoo against Glenn, and it worked. It unfortunately worked. A.J. Brown did score 2 touchdowns. Glenn did go off for a win. And I think what Ty was trying to do, he was trying to neg, but unfortunately, the Magic knew that, and it hit Ty with a reverse neg, where the thing he was saying was going to happen so that it didn't happen ended up happening. So I'd love to get more into the science behind negging, how we've used it to win weeks. So again, but not everything happens in chat. So if somebody messages you on the side that they say something that, maybe in Xbox Live, wherever it is, send it in, let us know. And my producer wants us to get off the segment immediately. So send us send us your NEGs, and we'll get through those. I don't really have any other pod updates. So Bill is off our screen for right now. We are going to cut over to our next segment. Very excited for the commissioner's address. I'm going to drop off. Jimmy has a fascinating topic this week that he's going to walk everybody through. And then after that, Bill, Jimmy, and I will get together to discuss it a little bit more. And then maybe you all can join in the comments. So after the commissioner's address, join in the comments. Let us know what you think. And without further ado, I will introduce Mr. James Ferraro. Or I'm sorry, Dr. James Ferraro.
I appreciate that.
Just give me 1 second to hop off here, Jim. All right.
All right, so I'm excited to be back for another commissioner's address where this week I'm telling you that you did not get it right the first time. You need to be active, you need to be making trades, you need to be working the wire. I'm here to tell you that if you don't take risks, you will not win. First, I want to start with like a brief history, just like of trades in general within the league. So if you look at this first graphic here, I've represented all the trades that everyone has completed over the history of this league, averaging just over 36 trades per person. You can see that we have two people in particular that are quite active in their trading, both Glenn and Dan, well over 60 trades total. And then we have people hovering towards the bottom where Steve is in a class of his own, but also Evan, and then the combination of Nick and Justin. But if you really break it down, Nick seems to be trading on Steve level, because Justin is responsible for 15 out of those 24 total trades that are represented for Nick there. So this is represented without much comment. I just wanted to show you graphically who's been active, who's been stagnant, and you can extrapolate from there how that translates to winning, but I can comment on that in a little bit. So if we move on to this next graph, I think there's a few things that you can extrapolate from this visual here. But I think we can actually save this one for later, because there's something in particular that I want to highlight from this graph that I think is very interesting and something worth discussing, and maybe a potential reason why trades have kind of gone flat the last few years. But on the next slide here, you can see that you can justify trading because it translates to winning. So champions, on average, in the history of this league, make just about 3.5 trades per year. Rounded up, I'm going to call that 4 trades per year. Non-playoff teams, on average, make just over 3 trades per year. I'm rounding that down to 3 trades per year. So if you look at it, more trades is associated with winning. Our next statistic supports that as well. So among all playoff teams in the history of this league, the number of trades they've made is positively correlated with the number of wins that they've collected. Same thing with the total number of points that they've collected. So what that really means is that more trades equals more wins, and more trades equals more points. So make trades. And not only should you be making trades, but you should also be active on the waiver wire, because that is also shown to translate into success. In the next graphic here, we see a slightly weaker relationship, actually, between total acquisitions and total wins over the course of the last few years. So you see that number in the top right, the R equals 0.23. This is the positive relationship that you're seeing at a value of 0.23. Hopefully that puts into some context what a 0.76 looks like, and that was the value for trades. So trades are an even stronger predictor of wins. That's what you should take away from this. But I wanted to go back to that graph from before, where we're highlighting, and we're all realizing this, that trades have kind of gone flat. People aren't really active anymore. Everyone's trying to scam everybody else. And if we look at this next graphic, you can see that in the last 3 seasons in particular, we are in what I'm referring to as a trade deficit, meaning that no one's making deals anymore. We had people making as many as 14 in a season, 13 in a season. And some people well over 5, 6, 7, 8 trades in a season. And now, if we look at our next graphic, you can see that per person in seasons 1 through 8, we were making almost 4 trades per person per year. In the last 3 seasons, seasons 9 through season 11, it's just over 2. Now, why is that? I have one potential reason. that I want to propose. If we go to the next graphic, you'll see that same graph from before, but I've noted that in Season 9, we made some significant changes to our rules and specifically our roster construction that I think might be contributing to why no one's making trades anymore. So actually in Season 8, we got rid of kickers. I think that was a mistake, but in Season 8, we got rid of kickers. Defense remained for another season, but we got rid of those in Season 9. We also added a third wide receiver to our starting lineup in Season 9. We also added a 7th team to the playoffs in Season 9. So now more people are making the playoffs, more actual players are starting in your lineup, and we no longer have kickers or defense. So why might this lead to a trade deficit? Well, on the next slide, I have a few potential reasons why this might contribute. So one, everyone now has one fewer expendable starter, meaning one fewer person that they can really kind of play around with, either insert into their lineup or trade away to someone that might be missing someone from an injury. And now they're taking someone from their bench and inserting it into their lineup. So now, trading away your wide receiver 3 means that you're moving your wide receiver 4 into your lineup as opposed to not actually affecting your starting lineup. So there's a lot that goes into that. Additionally, I think the fact that you can actually make the playoffs as a 7 seed now is also really contributing here. So people that are, not doing as well, or maybe suffered an injury early in the season, can afford to stick it out a little bit longer because now one more team makes the playoffs. They can make it at 6 and 8 maybe. I also propose that kickers were important and we should reinstate kickers. That's my point about that. And then finally, I think that I really think that the main reason that no one's making any trades is because now you're all cowards. And I can say you all because I made a trade yesterday. So everyone should be making trades. I have data that shows it leads to success. Everyone should be working the wire. I have weaker, but still, data that shows it leads to success. But I am concerned because no one's making deals and something we did may have contributed to it. So I propose to you, our podcast host and our distinguished guest, what do you think? Why do you think we're not making trades anymore? Do you think that the change of rules in Season 9 is actually contributing to things? And do you think we can get back to the year where we trusted each other and people were making 8, 9, 10 trades in a season?
All right, I'm going to come back in. Somehow, some way. Bill will come back in. We'll skip over to the next scene here if we go to this. Perfect. Our first triple box on the pod, I think. Look at this. All right. I think we briefly had a triple box with Ty. But Ty, don't be offended that I didn't give you the chance to speak with Jimmy. I am letting Bill talk to Jimmy. Sorry. Get over it. So I will respond with two things. Jimmy, one, we are so close to getting that screen share right. It was way better than last week. Maybe one or two errors, but so close, so much better. So really great job on that.
Errors. Okay.
My other, it was my fault. My other comment, when I was looking through that, so Jimmy obviously shared that with me prior to recording this, and I got a chance to look at it. And I have a college degree. I went through those first 5 slides, and I said, I don't know where we're going with this. I don't know what the point's going to be. But when we got to that last one with that red line, and you can clearly see, it doesn't matter, but everybody, their trades go down, and it's just definitively at that one season and all the rule changes. That all made a ton of sense to me. So, Bill, I'll kick it over to you. I've been sitting on this for a little while. I think this is the first time you're reacting to it. So what's your reaction to Jimmy's proposition that our rule changes in Season 9 have actually led to less trading throughout the seasons?
I do think it's a big component. To Jimmy's point, having another player that would be a tradable piece being in your lineup, I think myself included, everybody in the league gets attached to their own players or is afraid that they're going to trade them away. That becomes a star. And I think that that's very common, especially when it's somebody that you play every week. And adding another spot for a player to play every week definitely increases that. So I definitely agree with that. But I also want to point out that things like Sleeper Bot and Fantasy Life became significantly more popular around the same time. And access to information for fantasy news is at everyone's fingertips now. It is significantly easier to find. It penetrates every single social media. So I think that also can be a contributing factor is that nobody can sneak on each other anymore.
Jimmy, if you've got nothing directly, I definitely can speak to that, and I agree. Not to talk more about my team or anything like that, no propaganda here, but I think Saquon's like the perfect example of like, I think if I went to trade him right now, it'd almost be impossible. Not to say that I'm not asking for a Jahmyr Gibbs or a Bijan Robinson back, but I think getting remotely relative value for someone like Saquon would be really hard right now. And part of it is because, to Bill's point, everybody has way better information. Like, people probably know that the Eagles' offensive line is now like 24th or something in like run blocking, and historically, everybody thinks the Eagles' offensive line is so good. So I think like 5, but especially like even like 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, I think it would have been a little bit harder to quantify that. Like, maybe they didn't look as good, but you wouldn't have like several people that you follow on multiple platforms telling you and confirming like, yes, Saquon's line is bad. Like, don't trade for him. So I do think that Bill's point, there's just a lot of information out there, and it's very hard for maybe someone's own bias that could foster a trade. I think you guys obviously are a good example between London and Adams. You each had a position. Bill's obviously a little bit more logistical with the bye week, but you each had a position on the rest of season outlook on those players, and there wasn't enough data for you to just be like, oh, I'm wrong, or this feeling I have is wrong. So I do think that the access to more information is making it really hard, because people are very well informed and can, as Homer Simpson's once said, you can use facts to prove anything that's even remotely true. So it's just one of those things where it's like really hard to buy into this idea that another player might do better when you know everything about both players in a trade.
Yeah, I agree. I also think there's a part of it where no one wants to be wrong. Jack, I think you said it the other day. It's easier to be wrong on a call on the waivers than it is to be wrong on a trade. So when you're trading, you're giving a player to someone else, and that means if you're wrong, they're right. And that's not a good feeling. It's different. Dropping a player that pops later is one thing, and you're kicking yourself for weeks, but you didn't give them to someone else.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel the same.
Yeah, and if
especially when what you get in return doesn't work out.
Yeah, I think we'd all rather lose on our own accord than see someone win off of our back. Like, no one wants to be the fool. We'd rather be the loser than the fool. I'll throw out one other rule change, and I don't have the year that we did it, but I think Fab also probably plays a slight role in this, because you no longer have the last place teams just siphoning off the best available waiver wire picks each year. And I do think, combined with a smaller playable roster or less skill position players that you'd have to play, those waiver wires have, one, just become more important, but two, now nothing's stopping me. If I lose my starting running back and the handcuff's out and somebody grabs it, I'm kind of almost like forced to do business with that person a little bit, because I've got to go out and get that guy now that they just got. So this last place team gets to go to me and kind of make a deal. Now with Fab, I can go in there and be really aggressive with that guy, and make sure that I don't miss them. So I do think that has also probably hurt some of the windfalls that teams that are struggling get, and then maybe has prevented them from having some additional pieces to make those moves. So I'd be curious.
Started Fab in season 8.
Okay, so kind of all tracks there. So interesting. Maybe we ruin the league. I don't know. Hard to say. All right. Anything else on this topic, guys? Otherwise, we are going to skip out. Jimmy, if you want to stick around, I don't think we're formatted for 3, so I might have you drop off, but we're just going to go to our anytime parlay and then our catch-up. So anything else from you guys?
Just make some trades, please.
All right. I think the longer season, too, an extra week just delays things. All right, Bill. The moment that a lot of people have been waiting for, your roughly 18-second, 6-player, anytime touchdown parlay, 1 touchdown per matchup. Who do you got?
All right, I'm going to go down the list. It's a little bit of a different order than you had, but I have me versus Ryan. I have the touchdown as Rico Dowdle. I think they right the fifth after getting too many touches to 100 last week, and Dowdle is going to score.
Okay. Next.
Next, I have Glenn and Jimmy. I have the TD as A.J. Brown. I spoke a little bit about the Giants' defense and their issues in the secondary, so A.J. Brown is going to score. Next, I have Jack versus Tyler. Ibuka, off a cold game last week, is going to score a touchdown this week. You're welcome, Tyler. Next, the Duffy Bowl. I mentioned this again, the Giants defense. I think maybe Jalen Hurts gets a anytime touchdown this week as well when somebody gets tackled at the 1 yard line. Jesse versus Nick. I have the touchdown as Xavier Worthy. I told you I think that the Commanders are going to get run over, and if Mahomes does throw a touchdown, it's not going to hurt.
All right, so we've got our last one. Yeah, what's our last one here?
Evan versus Steve. I have RJ Harvey scoring a touchdown, just playing the Cowboys.
All right, perfect. So we've got Xavier Worthy, Jalen Hurts, RJ Harvey, AJ Brown, Rico Dowdle, and Emeka Ibuka finding the end zone. We will post the odds a little bit closer to Sunday once those are announced, but that is Bills. Roughly 18-second, 6-player, anytime touchdown parlay. All right, that wraps it up. You have made it to our final segment. I'm not going to drop your last name. I almost called you Mr. Blank. But, Bill, we've got the catch up here. I'm going to pass it over to you. Like everybody else, an opportunity. Doesn't have to be monumental. You know, Glenn having a child, Jimmy writing a book. They kind of really skewed this here. But this could be simple. What do you got going on in your life? What's going on that you want everybody to know about or that you want to share with everybody today? And we'll bring up a photo of your dog.
So, I have something I've been trying to get off my chest for a while that I want to tell the group about. I've been very hard. I've said some bad words about this in the past. I don't want to apologize to you guys because we never apologize. You apologize, but I want to say some words on hiking. You know, going back to the Tahoe days, I complained that we were going on a hiking trip. It's been a newfound hobby of mine. I have to come clean. Been doing it every weekend, and hiking's a shit.
All right, I love it. All right, where have you been in Connecticut? Can you give us maybe your top 3 hiking spots in Connecticut?
Oh no, we go to a park nearby by my house. There's 2 that we go to, but Bicentennial Park is one, and the other is Ragged Mountain.
All right.
Both are really close to my house, and we bring the dog every weekend. It's been a great time.
Fantastic. Yeah, I love hiking. Done some cool hiking out west as well. Maybe one day we can all put together a hiking trip again and go on a little bit of a walk. So, all right. I was going to ask if you had any new lights on any appliances or any new technology, but I like the hiking update. I think that's a good one.
Wait. I did. I got a new giant mouse pad for my desk.
Okay.
And it has lights around the outside.
Wow, that is pretty badass. And I'm assuming you use that when you play Battlefield with Brendan.
With Brendan, yeah. With Evan, with Steve.
Wow.
Steve has been a warrior recently. He's finally jumped on board after not playing Call of Duty with me.
You know, he had that 3rd kid. He's winning in fantasy. A lot of things coming up, Steve.
Moved into a new house, and he's still killing it on the back.
Maybe we can get him on the pod someday. I'm not going to say how many times I've asked, but all right, Bill, that was a fantastic episode. Thank you for joining us here on the Home League Pod. We will let you go. Good luck this week. I think you've cursed every player that I have on my lineup, so maybe that was maybe that will be the friend neg, and we can break that down next week. So that's our episode. Shout out to Jimmy, the commissioner. Shout out to my producer. Shout out to the champ, Brendan. We will see you next week. Make sure to subscribe, comment, like, whatever you got to do. Engage. All right, Bill. Thank you again. See you later.